Welcome to another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. And now, your host, live from England, here she is. It's Deborah Ruffini.
Greetings from England. This is Deborah Ruffini with another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show. Today it is my pleasure to be speaking with Issy Vine, a former emergency services worker who reported wrongdoing within the Metropolitan Police. She's here with us today to share her scenario. Issy, thanks so much for being with us. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's been all go for you, hasn't it, recently?
It has. It really has been quite a stormy roller coaster. But you know, all happy to share my story with anyone and everyone who will want to listen. So thank you so much for having me. Oh,
you're more than welcome. As we spoke before, and it's something we're both very passionate about, and as I'm sure you'd agree that we, before it actually you go through something like this of various natures, it's hard to believe it exists, really.
Yeah, definitely. It's so ludicrous and just unthought of that you almost think it's sort of in your head, or surely something like this wouldn't happen. And it's I mean, it's not nice, but I'm kind of glad that we can both relate on that sort of end of it, because going through these situations is quite isolating. So to be able to relate our two experiences, it's quite nice. Out of anything that can come from it, it's nice to talk to other people who've been through the same.
Yeah, like you say, so that you don't. There's not that sense of being alone, and also to support others. And with lots of things, we have to go through rubbish in order to, be there for others. So it's good. I'm very proud of you. I'm really looking forward to.
Everyone doing their part to sort of speak out is the main thing.
Well, yeah, and it just makes you hopping mad, doesn't it? It makes you really angry.
Exactly. But I always find, there's two amazing things to speaking out, is that obviously, it can educate and make people aware of your story and what's happened, but also it's kind of, in a selfish way, it's quite therapeutic for yourself. So it's always good to get everything out. And so many... You feel like you're the only one experiencing it, but so many other people, once you start speaking out, so many other stories come out. And, I mean, sadly, if it's to do with police misconduct, which is, what our stories are about, you'd hope that other stories don't come out, because that's not what you want. But unfortunately, more do come out, but it's good to share.
And in speaking out, it encourages others to think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I'm actually going to, air what's happened to me. So you were a call handler for emergency services. Is that right? When did you start?
Yeah, I joined the Met in 2020, just at the beginning of the pandemic, as a call handler. So that was taking 999 calls and non-emergency police calls from the public. So I did that for about two years, and then I spent sort of the last couple of years in my role there as a dispatcher. So that's sort of like radios and more talking to the officers instead of the public. But yeah, I was there for about 5 years, and it's definitely quite a job. I mean, you do hear all sorts every day. But I mean, I was really excited when I got the job. I was really happy, and I felt that I'd found something that suited my personality, because I'd always been quite vocal, and I'm not usually afraid to say what I think, and I always sort of intervene. And I just thought, well, maybe I can put that kind of trait in me, sort of to good use, and sort of help people with it. So, and I did always want to be a police officer, but I think I'm a bit lazy, so I thought this is the same. I can help people, but I don't have to run around. So I thought this is the perfect role for me. That's what I started at, and it was quite a job.
Yes, I bet it was. I bet you never knew quite what was going to come at the end of the phone.
No, exactly. You're always kind of on your toes, and you sort of do 12-hour shifts with not many breaks. I know it's a tough job, but it's funny now that I've done it, I can kind of say that the actual job of answering a 999 call is actually the easiest part. It's sort of tough part of it really is the hours and 12 hours looking at a screen and just going from call to call. Just different, like all sorts of things happening, and your heart rate's like really high all of a sudden because you've got like a stabbing going on, and then you hang up, and then the next call can just be like a really chilled report, so it's quite like up and down.
Yeah, but, I bet.
It did keep me on my toes, and it's quite a good job if you want to learn how to remain calm under pressure.
Yeah, I bet.
It does teach you how to do that, but. It was an interesting job, and I enjoyed the sort of radio aspect of it as well with the officers. That was quite interesting because you got to sort of see the other end of it. So a lot of the time, if someone would call up and you would answer the phone, you would hear their side of the story. So they would call up and say, there's a big fight going on in a store. Oh gosh, it's all kicking off. So you would take what they've said and you would try and dispatch officers as quick as possible. But then if you worked in dispatch, which is what my last role was, you would sort of be talking to the officers after they'd gone and responded, and you'd actually hear, it was just sort of like a bit of a dispute about, a parking ticket or something, and it wasn't actually a fight. So it's quite interesting to see the sort of other end of policing and sort of the results, because when you just answer the phone, you just sort of hear the first part of the story and you never know what's going on.
That's interesting. Yes, that's true. And I guess sorry no,
you go ahead.
Okay. So I don't want to divert, but just came into my head, I guess it must be hard if you suspect a prank call, because I would imagine you've got to take every call as a serious call, even if you think it's something that must be difficult.
It is difficult. I mean, you do get a lot of hoax callers, but luckily with the technology, you can sort of see if someone's telephone number sort of keeps populating and sort of what the general gist was. But I mean, we were always taught, if anyone's ever alleging like an offence or they're in danger, just take it as face value, and because you don't want to ignore it just because previously they might have pranked you or something, and then if you ignore it this time, God knows, if something, God forbid, did happen. So, I mean, there were a lot of, hateful calls and stuff. Not everyone likes the police, but I mean, you just sort of get numb to that, and you kind of understand it because the police don't make it sort of they don't do, how do you say, they don't.
You say it any way you want.
Well, they don't make it easy for themselves, especially with all the misconduct and corruption and stuff like that. So you kind of understand why people aren't really a fan of the police, and then also they're also underfunded and resources are so stretched. People they're just not getting the services that they need. So people hate the police because of that as well. So you kind of understand why people prank call the police, but
it doesn't justify it, but it's sort of that's right. So so your overall experience of working with your other colleagues was pretty good. Generally working with the people, working at the police, it's very diverse. You have all age ranges, you have all ethnicities, it was pretty 50-50 female and male in my department. It was quite a nice, diverse environment to work in. And, I mean, a few times, there'll be people there that you're not really going to click with, but on the whole part, it was quite an okay environment. But obviously there are worms in that environment that creep through. There was one problematic person, wasn't there? How did this come about? Would you like to talk us through that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I suppose this is where everything sort of went downhill. In about, I think it was 2023, seems like years and years and years ago.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah.
I sat next to, I sort of I got into work as normal, settled into my desk for the day, was about to do a 12-hour shift answering 909 calls. And when you go in, you don't have a designated desk, you just have anyone sort of just takes any desk, and you can sit next to different people each day. And I sat down, and there was already a male colleague next to me who'd already sort of settled into a shift, and I'd seen his face once or twice, but I didn't know him, I didn't know his name or anything like that. And we began the shift, and there was a little bit of small talk, just because you're sort of like less than a metre space between you, so you kind of sort of smile and have a bit of small talk. Just small talk and things like that. And then, really, I mean, even when I speak about it, I still can't believe it even happened. But the first out of many things, problematic things he did was he was doing digital reports, which basically, when you want to contact the police, you can either call or submit an online form on their website. And a victim had filled out a report online saying that she'd been a victim of rape and the whole sort of story of what happened. And I was unaware of this. I was doing my own work, and he nudged me and he said, have a look at this report. So I sort of squinted my eyes and tried to read it from where I was, could sort of tell the gist of it. And I was sort of like, oh dear. And they went, well, she does sound like a bit of a slut, and sort of covered his mouth as he said that. So when he said that, I mean, his body language obviously confirms that he knows it's wrong to say that anyway by covering his mouth. But I was just so shocked. I just thought, I was so just flabbergasted. I think I just sort of froze, and we sort of awkwardly went back to our work, because I was sort of halfway in my work anyway. And I was so shocked. I didn't even know what to think. So frazzled. But you know, in the police, you sort of, if you don't go on to the next call and sort of work on the trot, you sort of get a bit nudged by supervisors. So I felt like I had to get back to work.
Yeah.
So sort of a couple of hours went by, got on with my work, and he nudged me again. And I sort of, you can kind of hear the people next to you sort of what they're doing and who they're on the phone with. And I remember he was on a phone call with someone had obviously called 909 and was sort of asking for help with housing because they just got to the country. And he was explaining, obviously, you need to go to your council or the local housing associations. And I sort of knew the gist from hearing that because he was close to me. And after he got off the phone call, he nudged me again and said, can I be unkind? And I was sort of just like, what? Like,
no.
What are you saying? Yeah, well, hopefully not. But so he nudged me, and then he got his phone out, and he brought up the note app and was typing, why don't you F off back to your own country? And I just thought, well, he said, I just had a call from an immigrant, and then typed out, why don't you just F off back to your own country? And I was so disgusted, and I said, you know, because I've never really known him, met him before, and it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I tried to sort of stir the direction of the conversation is, oh, well, it is a shame that, you know, when people aren't first arrive in the country, they're not given some sort of like information booklet or some sort of resource to go to that describes like which services that you would call when you need to get help with X, Y, and Z. You know, some people do just feel like the only sort of place for help is calling the police.
Yes.
So I tried to sort of stir it like in a different direction, and I think he could tell that I was really uncomfortable with that comment, and so he said, oh, well, maybe I'm just being a bit harsh then, and then sort of awkwardly went back to his work and I went back to mine. I was at that point, well, this has got to be some sort of undercover, you know, corruption, misconduct, you know, testing me if I'm going to stand up to people. Because it's just absolutely, I just thought 2 comments in the space of like 3 hours, and I don't even know this person.
Yeah.
And then it just got worse, really. I mean, a couple of hours went on later, and I kept my sort of body turned the other way most of the shift to try and like give the impression that I don't want to engage in conversation. And I was taking a call from someone in Southwest London, and I had my maps up on my screen, which covered, all of Southwest London. You had Clapham, you had Lambeth, you had Putney, you had Southwest London. It wasn't just, a specific street. It was a big sort of zoom of the whole of Southwest London. And the call wasn't related to a sexual offence or anything like that, or a police officer. And whilst I was on the phone, he was nudging me and elbowing me and whispering in my ear, "Oh, Sarah Everard's turf, oh, Sarah Everard's turf." And I just thought, we hadn't been speaking about Sarah Everard, we hadn't been speaking about dodgy officers, we hadn't been speaking about rape, we hadn't speaking about anything to do with that. I didn't know him. It was really, really unsettling, especially, from the first comment he made, where he obviously has a sort of distasteful opinion on rape victims. They're sluts. I mean, it really, really unnerved me. And so the rest of the shift sort of went on, and in my head I was thinking, I've got to report this, I don't know how. Also, I was really worried to report it right then and there, because we both were working next to each other, and I didn't know if they would bring me out of the room with him and make us hash it out. And I was just, and they don't really sort of promote a lot about reporting these things. They only sort of home in on, if an officer or a staff member sexually harasses you or commits a crime, then report it. But it was nothing really about saying dodgy comments. So I wasn't really sure what to do. So
yeah, of course.
We finished at the same time. We finished about 11 p.m. and I sort of hung back for about 20 minutes at the front door. And lo and behold, when I left, he was waiting outside.
Scary.
And my bus, I knew he lived in a complete opposite direction, and within the small talk of the shift, he told me that he just gets a straight bus home, and the bus that he gets is completely in the opposite direction to me. So throughout the day, I thought, great, well, at least we won't sort of go the same way home together. And as I was getting on my bus, I heard a big sort of banging on the bus, and someone was shouting, "Hold the bus!" And he jumped on the bus, and I said, "Why?" And then came and sat next to me, and I said, "Why are you coming on this bus? This is not your way." And he said, "Well, I'm coming your way tonight. I'm coming this way." And I just said, "But why? You get one bus straight outside work in the other direction, straight to your door, whereas he'll have to get the bus with me, then one of my trains, then a tube home, and then another bus home."
That's frightening.
And it just didn't make sense, but it was so uncomfortable. So he got on my first bus and my first tube, and then halfway on my tube I just jumped off, and he was just left with the tube, and I was just so uncomfortable, but so relieved that I could just jump off and get the second tube, the tube after home. And then I went in the next day and reported it, and then it sort of, it went to a gross misconduct hearing at Scotland Yard, and he was dismissed, and I was really proud, and I thought, the police obviously believed me, because I was always worried. I didn't have any proof, I didn't have any recordings. It was just sort of my word against his, and sort of they judged my actions after against his, and I had to show proof with messages I'd sent my friends on the day that oh my god, what should I do? And sort of they had to interview other witnesses that were around me to sort of judge my credibility, but they dismissed him in the end, and they said that their gross misconduct was proven. So I was really proud, and they said he can appeal, but we don't want people like that in our force. It's
too right.
Not acceptable. Yeah, exactly. And then 4 months went by, and I put it all to bed, and was really proud to work for the police. Then I get dragged out of work for a 5-minute meeting to tell me he'd appealed, he'd won, and he was rehired. And I just could not make sense of it.
No.
Just does not make sense. It goes against all code of ethics and anything that you'd want someone working in a public service to be. It just didn't make sense at all. And so he was rehired. I met the decision maker who decided to rehire him, and he made further dodgy comments saying, that the panel was too emotional when they dismissed him, and the panel was 2 females and 1 male, and that they were too irrational, and that, you can have any opinion you want, no matter how harmful. It's just if it turns into like a physical action, which I completely disagree with.
Yes, yeah.
Because everything starts with, a mindset, and then that can turn into like vocalizing it, then that can turn into like an action. So you have to kind of stamp it out as soon as you see little hints,
exactly.
whether that's comments. So then he was rehired, and then he's back working there now, and so I just was so appalled with the whole process that I made a complaint. I sound like a sort of stupid, annoying complainer, really.
No, it's rightfully, yeah.
Well, it's the sad thing is just like when you want to be vocal about something and you feel like something's unjust, you sort of get made to feel like a sort of annoying, like, nuisance.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's with reason, though, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's such a shame that you're sort of made to feel like that. But so I escalated a complaint about the man who rehired him as well, and they said, it's very serious. We're gonna get someone really high up to look at it. They're already looking at it and reviewing it. And so I waited months and months and months for a reply. Didn't hear anything, and then I thought, well, sod this. I'm gonna, contact them myself and see what's going on. So I contacted them, and they said they'd never received anything. They didn't know what I was talking about or who I was.
Right.
And I'd gone back to the original department that I made the complaints with, and they said they don't know what's gone on, but obviously my complaints weren't actioned properly. And only now, since I've left the police and it's gotten into mainstream news, they have now taken it on. Someone really high up is investigating the whole thing. But that's really the crux of the whole thing, really. But
my goodness, it's horrific. Yeah, it's absolutely. And isn't it a shame, as we said before, didn't we, Izzy, that it has to take something to get into mainstream news in order to. So is it really a superficial apology that crikey, we better make it look good for ourselves, we better apologise now?
Yeah, it's so terrible, but I would not be. I know it's like this for the police, and I would not be shocked if it was the same for other public services. But within the police, it's all about reputation rather than, any sort of internal issue. It's all about, well, if the public know, or what if this got out into the mainstream, how would that affect public confidence? Instead of actually solving the problems within that would strengthen public confidence.
Yes.
They just care about reputation and what's gotten out. And I really wouldn't be shocked if that was, well, I could probably say for a fact things like, CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, social services, other emergency services, they're probably all the same. It's all about reputation rather than actually solving the institutional issues, which is such a shame.
It's dreadful. It's like they're not emotionally involved. And I suppose in a sense you can't be. But there's got to be some degree of being you were doing your job and having a heart of passion for that, but it's just there has to be some degree of emotional input, wasn't there, to actually be a police officer?
I don't know. I think I really don't know, and I don't think it's only. I don't think it's only relevant to police. I think it's any type of social work or social sort of care work that you do, or public sort of care work that you do. I think maybe a lot of. Definitely with the police, it attracts 2 different types of people. It attracts people that want to help and do good, and it attracts people who just want power. But I also do believe that with the strains on all these services, and how badly they are run by senior leaders, like the leadership teams that are people who aren't frontline and people who are high up who don't understand what's going on the ground, as to say. I think a lot of good people who do join the police or NHS or anything, I think they start off with good intentions, but they just get so run down and so fed up with how it's run that they end up just being bad themselves, or they get so numb to what they're hearing and all this toxic, situations that they have to deal with, and the terrible language that, I mean, there'd be so many times I would answer the phone and it would just be racist, like racism or, sexist comments and just hate speech just drilled down the phone.
Really? That's not nice.
Yeah, maybe some officers and staff just get numb to it and used to it because it's what they're surrounded by. I don't know, but I don't think there's a lot of emotion in policing, and I think because also I always feel like it's really similar to the royal family. I know it sounds silly, but they always say, like, you have the royal family, and the royal family are two things. They're an institution, they're a firm, they're a business, but they're also an actual family. Yeah. And I always feel like policing's quite similar, where, policing is technically supposed to serve and protect the public, serve and protect humans, serve and protect, the people that live in their jurisdiction. But actually, it's a business and it's an organisation and it's a firm as well. It has to meet stats. It has to save money. It has to, be able to show the government that it's fully functioning when it actually can't. And, as much as they want to serve the public, or however so they try to, answer every 999 call or help everyone, they actually just physically can't. Because, they have so much pressure on them to meet stats and stuff like that, which is really not beneficial. And I mean, I just think it's really similar to the royal family. I mean, it's people think, the police, the police, should be, caring and should be wanting to serve and protect, but I just feel like it can't just do that, because it's an organisation at the end of the day that has to run and has to save money just like any other business would. So I think that lets down the police service as well. But I mean, your experience with the police was, when you told me about that, was just absolutely dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
It was just hard to believe. It was early in the morning. I'm not an early person. I remember thinking, is this my former ex's former partners? Is it a mate? Is it, what's going on?
Is it a prank? Is it a joke?
Yeah. And I ended up, I don't know if I mentioned it, I had a quick shower, took half a diazepam and went down to the station. And I said, I don't know what was going on. I feel like it's a bit of a dream.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Izzy, that the woman that was, so that would have been a call taker, I think, was that, and in the actual station.
Yeah.
And she was very sweet, but she was someone I recognised as being at school. I wasn't friends with her, but she was at my same school. Yeah. And it was really odd, because she said she was trying to prepare her words carefully, and she said, that officer, she does well, let's just say she's got a name for taking a more firmer approach. And behind her there, and I just grinned.
Yeah.
And behind her there was this other woman in uniform, and she was smirking, and I thought, right, there's a lot I don't know here.
It's just awful, exactly. I can just even imagine that, you looking in and there's just someone behind smirking. It's just awful. And I feel like that's so bad that even other, colleagues of theirs have even got like a sort of, whether it's a nickname or, someone's known for being that hard and brutal with the public or something, as she was with you, and so other colleagues are saying, well, she's known for being a bit like this.
Yeah.
Oh, well, instead of just saying, oh, well, she's known for being a bit tough or a bit rough or a bit impolite with, why doesn't anyone, if someone's known for being like that, why has no one stepped in and said, you probably should change your approach to the public or how you deal with people, instead of just letting people be known as...
Yes, that's a good point.
doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. I mean, even it goes to extreme levels as that prolific sex offender David Carrick, the officer, the ex-officer, he was known as Rapey Dave. I mean, instead of letting people be known as things, why don't people step in and say this is wrong?
Yes.
And it's funny you say that, because there were so many call handlers in the department I worked in, and so many dispatchers that were just absolutely dreadful and horrible over the phone and cold and intolerant and impatient and unkind and uncompassionate. And it was known, like, you would hear everyone, shouting at callers on the phone, and just horrible. And you would just have management just not intervening and not wanting to hold people accountable for being horrible to the public. And it's really bizarre, really, really bizarre. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I would always say, if you call the police, there's a 50% chance, or maybe even higher, 75-25 chance you'll probably get someone horrible than nice.
Really? That's scary.
I would say that, because just there's no drive in the police, even though they say there is. There's no drive to improve the service. It's only a drive to improve reputation.
Dreadful.
So it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. But people, people shouldn't be you shouldn't let people start being known, for a certain thing. If it's, and also that's not a justification. Like in your case, she's known to be a bit like that. Okay, great, and that's still terrible. So that's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's just how she is. That's just how she. Yeah, it's just how she is.
Yeah, it's terrible. So.
Well, I couldn't understand. Izzy, I don't know if I mentioned to you before. I couldn't understand how. You start off with one officer or member of police staff, whatever. I can't remember her actual title, but she's like down to me at the phone, telling me off for reporting the child abuse that I witnessed firsthand, because it was abuse. It was upsetting for. She didn't say those words, but it came down upsetting for the abuser. And then she falsely accused me of two things that just could not have happened. Well, let's see what else we can get Deborah with. So I couldn't believe that for a start. And then on top of that, and I thought, she'll be sorted out. It'll be easy. I don't know the principle process here. But I couldn't believe you also then had the PSDI, is that right? Professional Standards Department, the person who sort of deals with that. His attitude, and I remember saying to him, I think I was about to give a name, I mustn't give a name. I said to him, I think you're a good man who's made to do bad things. Because when I mentioned to him that, how can you possibly justify not approving of child abuse, but saying, someone shouldn't report it, and false accusation. How can you possibly justify false accusation? And his only response was, she does great work at Pride events. That was his only response. And then it's not just him, it goes to the sergeant, her sergeant, and then he lies on the report. And I'm thinking, crikey, how far does it... So you've now got three corruptive... Yeah. That was the horrifying thing.
It's terrible. And there is a really strong culture of having to cover up for your colleagues.
Is there?
In the police, because it's a very, I don't want to say gang-like, but it's very clique-like. If you shouldn't tell on your colleagues, or a bit like, you wouldn't snitch on your friends. And we're all in this together, and we all have a bond. And why would you call out your colleague? That's so unfair. Like, you could risk their job. It's easier to cover up for colleagues than call them out, because calling them out, you're sort of worried about being ostracized for it, or looked at as a snitch, or we can't really be around them, or we can't joke around them just in case they snitch on us. There's a very strong culture like that, so I think I'm not surprised that 3 people have covered for her. But I mean,
that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and also it's so interesting that you say, the sergeant said, well, even though it was wrong that she encouraged you not to report child abuse, the fact that he's then saying, and we also have to look at, she's done such great work for the other communities, etc. In misconduct processes, it always the sort of format they use when they are assessing an officer's misconduct is you have to balance the misconduct they've done against the level of service. And I have such a big problem with that because I feel, personally for me, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I think it's irrelevant, if they did really well last year on, a specific job, or if they've committed so many times to a specific community or whatnot, or they've been an officer for 25 years. If you've done wrong, you've done wrong.
Yeah.
And you need to be, I feel like punished is a negative word, but
held accountable.
I feel like it's needed. Yeah, exactly. Held accountable for the bad thing you've done, regardless. It's kind of like they're sort of excusing it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times in misconduct cases that I read, it always says, well, yes, we've got 2 officers here, for example, that have engaged in a racist WhatsApp conversation, but, it would be more harmful to the public if we lose 2 officers with X amount of skills, blah, 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 blah. I completely disagree with the way they see that, because I feel like it's more harmful having bad officers with lots of skills, whatever skills it is, I don't know, driving a car really fast on blue lights or whatever. It's more harmful having a racist officer, for example, than keeping an officer just because he's been an officer for 25 years and knows how to drive a car fast or knows how to use a taser. Like, it just makes no sense. And so, that balance of, justifying their misconduct with how great a job they do sometimes, or if their colleagues give a few good character statements, it really doesn't make sense to me.
No.
It really doesn't. And I'm sad to hear that in your case because, I guess we have to praise officers and stuff when they do well, but
absolutely.
It should never trump when they need to be held accountable.
No.
And I feel like that is definitely what is happening nowadays.
It is frightening. It loses, we can only respect them when they're honest, and if they're dishonest, then they're not going to gain our respect. And surely they must know that. I mean, it's the fact they're not making steps to
justify or,
yeah,
make sense. Makes no sense.
It doesn't. And also, I found that, I mean, in this situation, well, both of our situations, they haven't been very, this is going to sound really unkind because I'm hardly, brain in Britain, but they don't seem to be that bright with sort of like emotional intellect. So when this woman phoned me and she said, so I said, well, these other things that they just haven't been true. Yes, I was guilty of phoning Child Protection Service. Well, not guilty, but yes, I did phone Child Protection. But these other things, you can't just say, and let's make some other things up to get at you. And then she said, well, if we receive any further complaints from Ms. you will be arrested. And I think I remember laughing at, I've got the recording of the phone call, but I think I remember laughing, saying, what, so if she just makes something really obscure up, like stealing the swans from Baffin's Pond, you're going to arrest, and I'll keep them in my loft, you're going to arrest me.
Exactly. And I think, when we spoke about this before, like you say, it's kind of like they make more work for themselves. Instead of just dealing with your complaint and concerns properly at the beginning, instead, they've ignored it, they've then berated you for it, and then they've also said, well, if there's anything further, we may arrest you, which is just so stupid and it's clown-like. I mean, just making more issues and more work for themselves, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's really, and then they wonder why people are so, not wanting to go to the police or go to the police. That's their last resort, because you don't know if you're going to be faced with a response like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's shocking.
Well, I saw something. I haven't mentioned this to anyone, but it's only because it's come into my head. I saw something. I won't mention what it was, but it was something that most people would actually go to the police about. I witnessed something a few weeks ago, and I immediately thought, I'm not, because what if they say no one else is around, so you did it?
Exactly. Well, that's awful, isn't it? That you have that thought in your head where you think, I'm not even gonna call them because
Yeah.
they might turn it on me.
Yeah.
So it's so terrible.
And thank goodness I don't jog or what is it, joggers and dog walkers. I haven't got a dog because they always find dead bodies. Like, no, I'm not gonna. I'd never report that in case I did it.
Exactly. You never know if you'll be the first suspect. Yeah. But
I'm exaggerating, but yeah.
It is so terrible. And it is such a shame that it's in the state that it is.
Yeah.
But I don't imagine it to be. I don't imagine things for change, really. I think you've got a lot of old officers and old staff members who are extremely stuck in their ways and are very done with the job and just fed up dealing with negativity the whole time, but fail to realise that maybe, maybe instead of leaving your job, they just continue working in it. And I always thought, the minute I start taking 9 calls and I'm getting fed up and annoyed with people when they're actually just victims, that will tell me that I need to leave. Like, I need to move on. Yeah. Because you can't stay in a job if you're not going to start if you're starting to get fed up with it, and these are victims of crimes. You need to be compassionate and
yes,
you need to make it a comfortable phone call or environment, for someone to open up about something that's, extremely harmful and painful for what they've gone through. But you have a lot of older staff and a lot of older officers that have stayed there, regardless whether it's because, the money, the pay, I don't know. But they really should not be working in policing because, they're just so dreadful over the phone or with people face to face. But they refuse to leave, and they kind of have this entitlement where they feel like, I've been a police officer, I've been a police staff for 30 years, I know how to do this, I'm not going to leave, like, why should I leave? But fail to realise that they're just giving a bad service and a bad rep for the police.
Yeah.
I do think, and also, are still stuck in their old ways of thinking, backward sort of mindsets, and sort of don't want to adapt with society, because I do feel like nowadays, we are more aware of what our language can do, and, we have to be more aware. There's a 50-50, some people think people are snowflakes and too offended, and some people are, saying that, we should be kind and aware of what we're saying and careful with our language. I do feel like there are a lot of people in the police where they feel like they should not change and adapt with society, and that how they think is how they think. And you've got a lot of old coppers that still, for example, even after I had to report my colleague, I had so many more bad things that I just didn't want to report, because I'll then look like a serial complainer, and I will look like someone who's just making a problem for everyone. But I had so many old coppers that were, you'd have domestic violence victims calling up, and, they would make comments like, well, she kind of deserves it because she sticks around, or...
Lord, really?
Things like that. Terrible, terrible things. Or once I retire, I'm going to sack off my wife and find, like, a nice young... just dreadful, degrading things about people and about callers, and just awful things. And, you try and... you can notice that in the police force, you can notice that the sort of newer, sort of more flexible and open-minded people that work there try and sort of teach the older sort of ones that are stuck in their ways that, okay, maybe we should not speak about this about people, maybe we should be a bit kinder about people.
Yeah.
You are also in the police, and maybe you shouldn't judge people when they're coming to you for help. But you have a lot of staff and officers there that just are very, very sort of backwards thinking, and
dreadful.
It is dreadful, and there is a massive culture and problem of no one wants to pull up anyone. Everyone's too scared to cause a problem. Everyone doesn't want to be a nuisance, and it's just terrible. And there's a real big tolerance for just saying terrible things, but because they're not actions, it's not that bad. When I completely disagree with that. Cause
I do. Yeah.
I think language and thoughts and vocalizing your opinions is it's the first step of things can snowball into action. I'm sure I'm sure Wayne Couzens said awful misogynistic and sexist and hateful things before it snowballed into flashing and then kidnapping and raping someone. So, I think then the sort of language needs to be taken a bit more seriously. And, I mean, if it was up to me, I would just sack anyone that's ever said anything sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, racist or anything. Yeah, because we don't need it. And I always say, like, socially, if you come across people like that, just don't have them in your life. And if you come across people like that in your workplace, don't have them in your sack them, because we need to stop saying we need to give people a chance to learn, because it's been a while now that we all know that it's wrong to be hateful to communities and stuff like that, and there's no space for second chances anymore. It just has to be stamped out. It's just such a shame that within the police and within policies and law, there's always there's just too many cracks and loopholes for these sort of toxic people to remain. It's just
good on you. We need you as the
terrible.
I can't think what it's called. Our one is I'm allowed to mention the name because it's Donna Jones, the police and is it crime commissioner? Is that what it's called? We need you as that title. I can't think what they.
Is it the minister of fire, police, fire, and something? I think that's just the Home Secretary. I'm not sure, but that's another funny thing as well, because I've gone to local government, I've gone to my local MP, I've gone to the Home Secretary.
Wow, good.
I've emailed so many government figures because I really want to change employment law, because employment law, the whole reason the guy I reported was able to return to work was because if he'd appealed and the director declined it and said, no, we're still going to keep you dismissed, he could have gone to an employment tribunal and argued that under employment law, the workplace didn't give him the chance to rectify his behaviour, because this was his first sort of recorded complaint. So I've written to so many local government figures to ask them to sort of mention it in Parliament or help me start a petition that we shouldn't be able to give second chances to public service workers that have been found guilty of gross misconduct.
I agree.
You shouldn't be allowed. I mean, it's very different to working in like retail. I mean, with public services, you're dealing with life or death and people's real lives.
Yes.
You could call up and say, my husband attacks me every night, but if I'm misogynistic and I have a hatred towards women, you could have someone. I could easily. I'm in a position of power to not write down everything you're telling me and close the report. And if we're allowing people with these opinions to be rehired because employment law says, well, we need to give them a chance to relearn that it's wrong, I just think that's unacceptable.
Yes.
If you're in such a position of power in someone's life, and especially when they're at their most vulnerable. But all the responses I've got from government are, well, we don't get involved in policing legislation because the police need to be able to be independent, and they need just absolute bullcrap replies from my MP, the Home Secretary. It's just I just can't get anywhere, it seems. So the only thing I can do is just campaign on my social media and always sort of speak out when I can. But
yeah, good for you. How did that get into? Sorry, just across my mind. How did that get into the media? Because that's an excellent step.
Yeah, well, I was always really, after I left the police, because whilst I was at the police, I was always sort of being sort of roughly nudged not to speak out on social media, otherwise I'd get sacked. But once I left, I thought, F it, I'm just going to, I'm going to say what I want, because I'm not going to let a big institution intimidate me. into holding them account. I'm not doing it. So
yeah, good for you.
I always did. I started a blog where I detailed everything, and I started, doing social media posts and things like that. And I was sharing, and I thought I can only reach as many people as I have on my social media. So I started to think how can I reach further?
Yeah.
So what I was doing is I was researching names of journalists, researching documentaries on police misconduct, and then looking at the producers and finding their names and then finding them on social media. And I spent ages researching crime editors from different magazines and newspapers.
Wow.
And then I was following them on social media and just tagging them and everything. And then one day a lady put me in touch with a Telegraph journalist, and he was really interested in the story, and then he put it out with the Telegraph.
Great.
And then the other newspapers followed, and sort of now, I guess I'm just sort of doing it on my social media now, and sort of trying to keep the momentum going.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does help once it does get into the news. I feel like more people sort of start to jump on the bandwagon once something gets out into the news. But
yes, that's absolutely right.
Yeah,
did you get much hopefully you've got positive feedback rather than negative?
Well, initially when the article went out, I would say about 40% positive.
Oh, really?
50% negative, yeah. And it was quite interesting because on the actual Telegraph article, there was about 260 comments, and most of them were, really terrible, really misogynistic comments like, well, perhaps maybe the colleague was testing if she had good banter or not, to see if he would date her and she failed the test, or, I need to get off my high horse and things like that. Really, really terrible comments. But at first I sort of was a bit taken aback and thought, that's so mean. But then I thought, no, this is really needed because it's sort of unearthed, if that's the right word. It drew out more misogynists and more problems.
Yeah,
and I thought, no, this is brilliant because I want people to expose themselves for who they are. And if they're going to be stupid enough to comment with their full name and their profile picture, hate speech on someone that's just trying to raise awareness for vulnerable people who are being or just misconduct and wrongdoing, and I'm just trying to make the police service a better police service.
Yes.
If you're gonna comment horrible things on that, then you do that because you're just exposing what a dreadful person you are. So to that, but I mean, it sort of turned a little bit now. Now I'm getting a lot of positivity, and
I'm glad.
And a lot of charities are. I've been speaking to a lot of charities and stuff like that, and gonna be doing some joint campaigns, and a couple of documentary people have contacted me. So
great, that's fantastic.
We'll see.
Get it out there, girl. Yeah.
I've always said I'm going to do everything and anything because now I'm free from the absolute, hellhole.
Yes. And you know what? In a sense, I bet that I'm just thinking. I bet it sort of makes you stronger, as in even if I do get this negativity, which is obviously it's looking towards it's going positive feedback, even better. You're probably thinking, I can cope with anything if I can cope with what I've been through.
That's exactly. I know it's that cliche of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, it definitely. I feel more motivated. The more hate I get, and the more resistance I get, the more motivated I am. I'll just keep going because at the end of the day, I mean, what I think's happened with you and what I think's happened with me is just wrong, and I'm not going to shut up about it because I hate to sort of become a really annoying, person that just goes on and on about something. But
no, it's not.
I feel like it's a serious issue, and I feel like if we just correct these issues and we correct the policies that enable bad people to stay in public services, then it will be fine, and no one will have to rant about these things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We all have a duty of care to do our part, and and I will keep ranting about it from the rooftops.
Yeah, good for you. And it's not right. It's not being a Karen. It's not ranting. It's because this is so wrong, and we need to. And I think there's very few and far between sort of how can we say it? Troopers would use that word, like yourself, but actually take no, we're not having this. I'm going to keep, like you say, keep going until something's done, or until the rate, rather than just say, oh well, it's just one of those things that happened, or no, it's good.
Exactly. I mean, there were moments where I thought, oh, I'm just going to give up because I'm just so mentally tired.
Yeah, I bet.
So just broken, But then, I have my moment, and I think, no, actually, then I get back to it, and I think, actually, no, it is wrong. So, I do have my moments, but I would feel worse if I didn't carry on. And more things come out, and I always feel like, because when I first reported this colleague, and then it all sort of, and then he came back, and I just thought, I always had bad dreams. That I thought, oh God, one day I'm going to wake up, and what if I reported him, and then they rehired him, and then he's gone on to do something even worse. And because I didn't make a fuss about it, then I've kind of enabled something bad to happen. So I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try and make noise about it as much as I can. Yeah. Until I'm so mentally frazzled that I end up in a loony bin. But,
and then you won't know who you are anyway, so it'd be bliss, wouldn't it? You'll have no recollection of.
And I'll be in the best place possible, exactly.
You are a trooper. Thank you so much, Issy, for all you do, and
well, I think in your situation, I think when you can, to tell anyone and everyone, because it's not acceptable, and especially something so sensitive as child abuse. If no one should ever be told by a police officer that they shouldn't be reporting that. So, it should.
I was
still shocked that it even was the case anyway. I mean, absolutely shocking.
And even after she actually asked what this person used to do to the kid, and I went into detail, and even after hearing, so it wasn't just a matter of, you naughty girl, you shouldn't have done that. I actually told her what happened, and her only response was, well, it was upsetting. Lord. It's just we'll keep fighting, but it's good because you've got a platform and you can do it, and also having worked in that environment, it goes further, I think, rather than just someone who has just had the So I think good on you.
I suppose it is quite interesting though. I am getting a lot of private messages from unhappy officers and staff.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, they're very annoyed at me, sort of painting the police in a bad way. But I always say, decent officers and decent staff will not have an issue with me doing this, because at the end of the day they'll want the same outcome as well. They'll want a better police force. So I feel like anyone who has a problem with it, especially police, then they might need to look in the mirror themselves and wonder why it's hitting a sensitive nerve. Because whilst I was in the police, if I ever saw anything about anyone trying to correct misconduct or speak out, I thought, brilliant, go for that, and go on them. You want this police force to be a good police force, or whatever you are. So anyone that's got a problem with it can either do one, or if you are in the police, then you need to really reconsider what your morals are, because it shouldn't be bothering anyone.
Absolutely. And sorry, I misunderstood you there, Izzy. First of all, I thought you were receiving messages from unhappy police saying, I'm unhappy in my job, or I'm made to do, but no,
I'm happy at me.
But that is crazy, because it's not. This is not. Yeah. It's not as if you've gone to the media and said, right, so and so's got head license stinks of wee. You're saying, I mean, they may have as well, but you're actually saying factual things that are wrong. How can anyone get upset with factual things that are wrong?
I know. I think it's really hard to critique the police, because you sort of, when you do, you get a sort of army of police officers and staff members that get highly offended, and I just don't. It's really unproductive, and it's really not useful for society. We should be able to freely be able to criticise and give constructive criticism on these services that are there to protect us. We should be able to criticise and critique them, because it's only to make them a better. And if anyone has a problem with that, then it's very strange, you know.
Isn't it? Yes.
It's just very bizarre. So no, I mean, yeah, I have had comments also. I have had messages also from officers who are in similar situations to me and asking for advice.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, which is lovely. And you know, I'm starting to speak up now, where officers can, or staff members, or anyone really from social services or other emergency services and civil servants can anonymously write a sort of little snippet of what they've seen or any misconduct they've seen, and they don't feel comfortable to report it, just so it can sort of expose it sort of externally.
Yes,
I've started that, so you know,
that's
it's
good.
I think it's just a long way to go in this giant load of crap, but I suppose that is.
Keep on keeping on. That's all I can say. Oh, it's been so great to chat with you. Thank you so much for sharing of your unfortunate situation with us. And it's been good to raise awareness, isn't it? And
definitely raise awareness. And thank you for having me. And thank you for sharing your story with me, because obviously I know it's not easy either. So.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. It's all
Thank you.
It's
thank you for
having
each
other. Oh, thank you so much. You're a trooper. Proud of you.
Oh, so are you.
Oh, thank you. And to the audience at home, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, lots of love and God bless.